Today, we are going to talk about some of my favorite audiobooks. I'm somebody who can get very easily distracted when I'm listening to an audiobook. So I need a narrator who's going to be high energy and engaging and really draw me in and make me listen. If you are at all like me, then listen up because I have some fantastic books for you. The genres are all over the place, but hopefully that means that no matter who you are, you'll find something that intrigues you. The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. This story starts out right after World War II when a man decides he's going to start this real estate empire, and what he does is he buys a house that is this lavish estate outside Philadelphia and referred to as the Dutch House. He buys it as a present for his wife, and it ends up being the undoing of everybody who he loves. He has 2 children, a son and a daughter. They grow up in this house and end up being kicked out of the house by their stepmother. The story, which takes place over 5 decades, ends up following this relationship between the brother and sister. You'll often find them in a car sitting outside the Dutch house, watching the Dutch house and having these humorous and angry conversations about how their father went from poverty to wealth with the purchase of the Dutch house, and then how they went from wealth to poverty when they were kicked out of the same house. Ultimately, it's a story about relationships and confronting the people who left this brother and sister behind. It is narrated by Tom Hanks, and he has such a wonderful way of telling a story. I grew up watching his movies, and his voice is very comforting to me, and he just really brings these characters to life so well. I found myself thinking, man, I need to find every single book that Tom Hanks has narrated and listen to it as soon as possible. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This is a science fiction dystopian novel set in 2045. It is about our main character, Wade Watts, who lives in this terrible reality, and the only way that he can find happiness and kind of escape the world around him is by plugging into this virtual reality world that's known as the Oasis. And the creator of the Oasis has put a bunch of Easter eggs into this world, and the person who figures out all of these puzzles will get the fortune of the creator of the Oasis. Our main character manages to crack the first clue, and as soon as he does so, it is a wild ride with a ton of competition. It's fast-paced and a very exciting book. It is also filled with 80s references, which is really fun if you grew up in the 80s or you are into that sort of thing. One of the 80s references that is made in this book is about Will Wheaton, who was the main actor in the movie Stand By Me. He is the one who narrates this book. He has the energy and the engagement and the excitement in his voice that really brings the listener along for this exciting ride and leaves you just on the edge of your seat wanting more. Pet Sematary by Stephen King, which is, of course, a horror novel. In this story, you have a perfect family, a physician husband, a beautiful wife, a daughter, a small son, and the daughter has a pet cat with her. They move together to a new town in Maine, and there's even this wonderful neighbor who stops by to welcome them and also warn them because there's a highway that goes by the house, and the cars and trucks drive really quickly on it, and so you need to be careful because a lot of animals have been killed on this road. In fact, so many that there is a pet cemetery just over the hill. One day, the cat tragically gets hit by a car, and basically the story gets really dark and horrifying from there. The tagline is, "Sometimes dead is better." So don't go in unless you're ready, but the audiobook is absolutely wonderful. It is narrated by Michael C. Hall, who is the actor who played Dexter, the serial killer, on the show Dexter. Though the father, who is the person who is telling the story in the book, is a wonderful guy, there are a lot of course, dark aspects to this story, and Michael C. Hall really brings it to life, and it is just a really jarring listen, and I highly, highly recommend it. Definitely check the trigger warnings before reading Pet Sematary. And finally, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This one has a really dark start. It's billed as a middle grade, but it starts with a murder of a small boy's entire family. The small boy is the only one to make it out, and he sneaks out of his house and up a hill, and he slips into a graveyard where he basically grows up and becomes educated, surrounded by ghosts and guardians. He has these wonderful interactions with all of these beings. His name is Nobody Owens, and his nickname is Bod. He's hiding from this murderer, Jack, who is the person who killed his entire family. It is just such a rich story. I personally absolutely fell in love with Bod, and I really enjoyed his interactions with the different ghosts, his adventures in the graveyard, and then the end it really gets you. There are two different versions of the audiobook. One is done by a full cast. I did not listen to that version. The one I listened to was narrated simply by Neil Gaiman, and I absolutely loved it. I will say that the book apparently has really beautiful illustrations, so I'd be interested to pick that up and look at it as well, because there are some things that you, of course, miss in an audiobook in some cases. Despite the dark beginning, I'm really excited to listen to this with my boys. Normally, I like to read books to them, but I think this is going to be a great one for the car because they will appreciate this one more if I am not the person reading it to them, if it's Neil Gaiman, because his story, he is just a master at it. And that's it. I would love to hear from you if you have listened to any audiobooks where the narrator absolutely nailed it and left you really wanting more. Please let me know in the comments so that I can give them a listen and add to this list. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you have a great day.